A very quick round of housekeeping before we begin. Please keep a pen and paper handy. You may want to take a note of the tips and tricks I will be sharing with you in this session. I've muted everyone while I'm presenting because sometimes I've seen people struggle to mute themselves and it becomes very distracting for others. But having said that, it is not a one-sided presentation. Towards the end of this meeting, we will have a question and answer session, and I will stay on this call as long as you keep asking me questions. And also, this session is not everything. Towards the end of this meeting, I will show you a way with which you can book a one-to-one consultation with me. It is a 30 minutes consultation sponsored by Airbnb. It is completely free to you. You can book that and we can talk about something very specific to your property which is concerning you. Please try and avoid sending me chat messages while I'm presenting because, I can't do two things at the same time and it becomes very distracting if I am having to chat or read a chat at the same time. But please feel free to send me a chat message if there is something terribly wrong with the presentation or if you can't hear me, you can't see me, things like that. But try and avoid having a chat with me while I'm presenting, please. I will be able to share a copy of the slides with you after this call, so please don't bother about copying anything you see in the slides because I can just email it to you after the meeting is over. And the next is I will try and touch upon various aspects of hosting. It's a very vast topic. It is not possible for me to cover each and every section or each and every aspect of hosting in such a short meeting. But if you're expecting me to talk about something or if there is something which is bugging you, please mention it to me in the question and answer session and I will go straight deep in. I've had people here before who were expecting me to talk about something which I didn't, and later on they complained that I didn't talk about that. If there is something which I don't cover and you want to know, please ask me in the question and answer session. And the last one is some sections of this presentation are mainly for UK-based hosts only. So if you're not in UK, and I will call that slide when it comes, it's basically one slide. Please ignore that slide if you are not in UK. Intro to hosting is the session we all are in. Everything I'm going to say is my own personal opinion. It has nothing to do with Airbnb. That's me, Prayas Chaudhary. I'm based in Edinburgh. I started hosting back in 2016 and since then I've grown from one property to 145 properties spread over 9 countries. And over the last 6 or 7 years I've managed to gather 1,700 5-star reviews from the guests. I'm an independent consultant. I do not work for Airbnb. Just because of my experience on the platform, they try and engage me in various projects such as this, where they're trying to connect some of the most experienced people on the platform with someone who's new or looking to start hosting on Airbnb. But, I do not work for Airbnb. I will give you my completely honest advice without any fluff. I also run a website. It's called bnbspecialist.com. Feel free to hop onto my website. You will find lots of useful resources about hosting over there. This is going to be the agenda for the meeting. It is divided into 4 different sections. The first one is getting started with Airbnb. This is where I will try and address all those concerns landlords have. I'm a landlord too. I started back in 2016 and at that time I can imagine all those questions you would be having as well, and I will try and address those in the first one. In the second section, which is how Airbnb works, we will talk about the intricacies of hosting, the mechanism of a booking, how booking process works, how the payment works, and then how the reviews work. Third section is practical hosting tips. It is nothing but a selection of my favorite tips, which I like to share with everyone who's new to hosting. And the fourth one is question and answer session. And as I said, I will stay on this call as long as you keep asking me questions. So let's begin. And the very first topic is Airbnb versus long-term renting. I believe everyone in this room is planning to start hosting at some point, and you have a property which you want to rent. We always have these questions, whether should I stick to the long-term renting or is Airbnb the right thing for me? I was in the same place back in 2016. I had the same doubts as well. Looking back, I believe these are the 7 points which Airbnb has an advantage over long-term renting. The first one is higher returns. Me personally, I've been getting up to 2 to 3 times the monthly rent I used to get from my properties. And it's not just like I have one property in Edinburgh and I've tried it. I've tried the same model over and over again in different parts of the world with multiple properties. I've always managed to get a similar return. So I believe it is reasonable to expect up to 2 to 3 times the monthly revenue of your rental if you do it the right way. The next is frequent access to the property. You get a lot more access to your property as compared to having a normal tenant, right? When you have a normal tenant, you cannot go there whenever you wish. You have to take an appointment. And in some countries, you cannot do it more than 6 months, right? Whereas when your property is on Airbnb, you will have people coming in, going out multiple times a week. So you can go and visit your property during those cleaning hours, right? Between the check-in and check-outs. Also, if you want to use your property, you can simply block the calendar and the property is yours. If you have a friend or family coming over and they want to use the property, you can simply block the calendar and the property is yours. So if you look at it that way, you have more access to your property as compared to a long-term tenant. And because you access the property a lot more, you get to pick up on maintenance issues very, very quickly. Your cleaner will be going there multiple times a week, going into each and every nook and corner of your property. They will spot anything going wrong. You don't have to rely on your tenant to tell you that small leak which they thought was irrelevant until it became too big, right? Anything goes wrong in your property, the first person that will come screaming at you is going to be your guest. On top of that, you will have your cleaner going there, and you will also be visiting your property more often than having a long-term tenant. There is regular cleaning as well. Your property has to be cleaned every time a guest leaves, so your property stays in a much nicer shape and form. There is less wear and tear as well. This is what I've experienced personally, right? And I'll give you an example. When I started hosting back in 2016, I bought this white dining table from IKEA. It has a white wooden top. And although I loved the table, but I knew that this table is not going to last too long because it was just so fragile. It was so easy to catch scratches. But I bought the table. And every time I go to my property now, the very first thing I do is I go and check that table. It doesn't have those scratches which I was expecting it would catch in the very first 1 month. The reason for that, I believe, is when people, especially when they're in Edinburgh, they probably have a quick cereal in the morning, but they have their lunch outside, they have their dinner outside. They don't have their major meals at the property. And I can see the same trend throughout my apartment, throughout my properties. Whether people are visiting your property for business or leisure, they will try and spend as much time as possible outside the property. Okay, they don't stay in the property as much as compared to a long-term tenant who's there all the time. So that way you will also notice this, that your property is used a lot less than a normal tenant. And I can see the same pattern throughout my property. The only thing that gets heavily damaged is what I've seen is the hallway, because people bring their suitcases and they keep turning them around and they keep scratching the walls in the hallway. That is the only area which gets heavily damaged, and I have to do a touch-up paint every 6 months or 1 year in the hallway. But apart from that, everything else looks pretty brand new. There are additional tax benefits. If you are in UK, I will talk about those additional tax benefits, but in other countries as well, I have seen there are lots of tax advantages of running an Airbnb. You can speak to an accountant or advisor about them. And the last one is Airbnb Host Protection Insurance. When you are hosting a guest from Airbnb, you will get 2 kinds of insurances. The first one is a liability insurance up to $1 million. Which basically means if someone breaks their leg while staying in your property and they decide to sue you, Airbnb will cover your cost of fighting that claim up to $1 million. The second kind of insurance you get is damage protection insurance, which is again for a value of $1 million, which means if there is a damage to your property or its furnishings due to guest negligence, Airbnb will cover the cost of replacing or fixing that item. And it is not just on books. Me as a host, I use this insurance all the time. Whenever people do make mistakes, they do spill wine, they do spoil my towels beyond washing, and when that happens, I raise a claim and Airbnb pays me a reasonable amount for either replacing or repairing that item. Next is, how is Airbnb different? There are lots of other websites. You would see Booking.com, Expedia, Vrbo, TripAdvisor. They all look the same, but why Airbnb? I believe these are the 5 points which help Airbnb stand apart from the rest. The first one is you can rent a shared space on Airbnb. A shared space is an area in your main residence. So if you have a spare room which you want to rent on Airbnb, that's a shared space. No other website in the world allows you to rent a space like that. Okay, it is only on Airbnb you can rent a shared space, which is a spare room in your property. Okay, this is how Airbnb started, and it still remains in its essence. But having said that, it's not like Airbnb is mainly for shared properties. At the moment, more than 70% of the properties on Airbnb are entire properties. These are entire flats, cottages, houses, and things like that. The next is both traveler and host get to review each other. This was started by Airbnb, and until that time when Airbnb started, in hospitality industry, people would go to a hotel and they could leave a review for the hotel, but there was no way for the hotel or the accommodation provider to write a feedback about the person, how they behaved and how they looked after the property. Airbnb started it, and both the parties on Airbnb get to write a review for each other. And it became so popular that now all other websites in hospitality industry, especially in accommodation space, everyone allows both the parties to write a review for each other. Unfortunately, on all other websites, I've seen people do manage to get fake reviews. Whereas on Airbnb, there is no way someone can have a fake review. Someone has to stay in the property to be able to write a review. After the checkout, Airbnb sends an invite. It comes via email, and that email is the only way to write a review for someone. And I believe this is a great thing, because me personally, when I'm looking at a property on Airbnb to stay, it gives me the comfort that, there is no possible way someone could have managed to get a fake review. All the good and bad is all there, which is a great thing. Whereas on other websites, I have seen people do manage to get fake reviews, unfortunately, very, very quickly. And the last one is host insurance. No other website gives you the kind of insurance Airbnb gives you. Okay. And I'm talking about the damage protection insurance. Some of the other websites do offer the liability insurance, but no website gives you the damage protection insurance. Any damage caused to your property by the guest, Airbnb covers it. On all other websites, you can set a damage deposit, which cannot cover all the expenses you may incur if there was a damage to property, right? You cannot have a 5,000 damage deposit. Even that is less to cover the damage someone can potentially cause to your property. Whereas Airbnb covers you for up to $1 million. For me personally, this was the single biggest factor which made me decide I'm going to try this. You can try Airbnb for a few months. If it works, great. Otherwise, you can always switch back to a long-term tenants. Whereas the other way around, it's not always possible because you cannot ask your long-term tenant to leave like that. Next is 4 stages of Airbnb hosting. Me personally have been through setting up multiple Airbnbs, and I believe everyone goes through the same stages I go through. These are the 4 different stages of Airbnb hosting. Planning and setup is what we will cover in this session. I won't be able to talk about the 3rd and 4th stage, which is operations and maintenance, but I have written an elaborate article on my website. I will share the link with you, and you can read about 3rd and 4th stage on that article. So let's start with the first stage, which is planning. When it comes to planning, the very first thing everyone should do is find out what kind of restrictions and regulations apply to Airbnb in your area. And when it comes to finding that, you do not have to go into Google and then find it from an unreliable source. Airbnb keeps a central repository of all the restrictions that apply to them in all the areas they operate in. I will be able to share that link with you after this. When you get that link, drill down to your city or area. And if you find a mention of it, they would have clearly defined what are the things you need to be aware of. If there is nothing mentioned, or if you don't find your city or area, that simply means there's nothing you need to be aware of. Okay, but it's very important that you do this as a first step before you do anything else in planning. The second is financial viability. Not many people realize until they are few months into this business is Airbnb is not real estate. This is hospitality. Okay, in real estate, you have a tenant who pays you a fixed monthly rent, which keeps dropping into your bank account month after month. Whereas on Airbnb, no matter where you are, you will have high seasons, you will have low seasons. For example, in Edinburgh, January is our lowest month. We make about half of the monthly rent. Whereas August is our peak. We make about 3 to 4 times the monthly rent. No matter where you are, you will also see the same kind of a fluctuation in your finances, right? You need to consider this. You need to think whether your situation allows you to have a fluctuation like that in your finances. The third is suitability. You need to think of the suitability, whether it is suitable for you and for your guest. For your suitability, I mean someone, if not you, someone you trust should be within 30 minutes of the property is what I believe. Because there are times when someone just needs to go and sort things out. And I've tried this, and I'm telling you from my experience, I started properties which were like 1 hour away from me, and it was okay for first few times. But there are things like people cannot open their lock, or they cannot open the lockbox, or they need help with opening a window and things like that. They need an extra pillow or a towel. There will be small things such as this where you just need to go there. But when these things happen, they're not an hour's drive one way each time. That's why I believe someone should be within 30 minutes of the property. They can go over and sort things out whenever these things happen. So make sure someone you trust is within the vicinity. The second is guest suitability. You need to think of, is the property suitable for the guest? Would they be comfortable staying there? Would they find it easy to navigate? Is it easy to find on Google Maps? Is it in a safe area? Is it in a noisy area? Is it next to a very heavy traffic street? Or is it next to a bar or a pub where there's going to be a lot of noise? You need to think of all those things. And it's okay to have some of these imperfections. For example, one of my apartment in Edinburgh, it is so central. It is surrounded by lots of pubs and bars, and it gets very noisy over the weekends. But the way I deal with that imperfection is I clearly mention it on my Airbnb listing, telling guests that, look, this property is central Edinburgh. It gets very noisy on weekend nights. If you're a light sleeper or if you're traveling with kids, please do not book my property because it will get noisy. And that's it. That's me done. If someone still wants to book it, they can book it, but they cannot complain. Okay, so that is how you can deal with these imperfections. But think of all these imperfections, and if there is anything, just mention it so you can set the guest expectations in advance. The fourth one is identify the processes. You don't really have to do anything, but at this point, picture all those processes you will need to go over as part of your hosting process. For example, someone needs to clean the property. What will happen if that person falls sick? Who will do the clean in that case? Or what if that person goes on a holiday? Someone will need to respond to the messages, right? Who will respond to the messages when you're sleeping or when you're on a holiday? think of all those things. Who's going to wash the linen, right? And all those things you'll need to picture in your head. And if it ticks all the boxes, you can start the setup phase, which is the next one. In setup, furnish the property, get photographs, create Airbnb listing, and set up key handover processes. These first four I will talk about in a greater detail in the following slides. Get home emergency cover is what I would recommend to everyone. For example, in UK, we have this British Gas Landlords Insurance. It costs about 20 to 25 pounds, but they cover all kinds of faults that can happen in a property. For example, a boiler fault, a plumbing fault, electrical fault. Anything goes wrong, you give them a phone call, they will come and deal with it. It costs about 20 to 25 pounds. I would recommend you get something like that in your area as well. And I've never had to use it, right? But it gives me the peace of mind. What if something goes wrong and I'm not reachable? So what I do is I display their number in my property and I tell all my guests, if there is a problem and for some reason, if you can't reach me, just call this number and they will come and sort it out. So try and have something like that if you can. Next is ensure the property is fire safe. Airbnb will not ask you for any kind of safety certificates. They will just assume that you have followed all the local guidelines for safety. And when it comes to finding the local guidelines, especially in the UK, there is no clear safety guidelines for a short-term rental. But from the research, what I've done is if you get all those things and checks in places, as if you were renting it to a long-term tenant, that covers you for Airbnb and more. So just get all those checks in place as if you were renting it to a long-term tenant and you're covered. But Airbnb will not ask you for any kind of certificates or something like that. Next is set up cleaning team and linen service. If you take my advice, do not get two parties involved in this process. And I'm telling you this from my experience. When I started, I spoke to a cleaning lady. She was going to come and clean my property, but she did not have any washing facilities. So I had to find someone to wash the linen. And I spoke to a washing service, a laundry service in the area. They said, absolutely, we will bring fresh laundry every time your cleaner is there. And it sounded great on paper. But when it comes to doing it, it becomes a mess very, very quickly. The reason for that is it is only a 3 to 4 hour window between two guests. When you're booked back to back, you don't have much time. There is not a lot of time to maneuver. Because you have two parties involved in those 3-4 hours, anyone running late, the other can't finish. And it becomes a mess very, very quickly. So what I would advise you is try and have one party responsible for both cleaning and linen. Maybe you can do what I eventually did. The same lady still cleans my property, but I spoke to a laundrette which was on her way to my property. And now all she has to do is pick up fresh laundry from there, and while going back she has to drop the dirty laundry, and that covers me for everything. I have a spare set in my property in case the laundrette doesn't open one day, but that's it. That covers me for all kinds of possibilities. Try and have something like that, because cleaning, anything goes wrong in the cleaning is going to have a knock-on impact on everything. So make sure you get this in total control. Next is on-call handyman and locksmith. You don't have to sign an elaborate contract with these guys, but the idea is to just bring them to the property so they're familiar with the property and you. For example, people like locksmith, even before they do anything, they need to know your association with the property. And when you are in the middle of a situation, you do not want to go through all that. That is the whole point of doing it now, is bring them to the property. They know everything about you. And the next time you give them a phone call, they crack on with it. Next is prepare cleaning checklist. You will need two kinds of cleaning checklist. The first one is going to be your regular cleaning checklist, which will involve all those things and areas which you will clean every time a guest leaves. And you don't have to go on the internet and try and find a cleaning checklist. It's super easy to create a cleaning checklist. Just stand in all spaces in your property with a pen and paper, look around, think of all those places which people will use or touch during the stay, and clean them, right? It will include things like washing the linen, washing the toilet, cleaning the fridge, cleaning the kitchen, and all those things, right? But make a list of all spaces in your property, stand there, look around, and make a list of all those things which people will touch or use when they are staying, and you clean it every time they leave. The second kind of cleaning checklist you will need is going to be a deep cleaning checklist. This will involve all those things or areas which are just not practical to clean every single time a guest leaves. For example, things like, mattress protectors, pillow protectors, or cleaning the windows from outside, or cleaning all those hard to reach areas. You will have certain things and areas in your property which are just not practical to clean every time. But make sure you include them in your deep cleaning checklist, and you have to follow your deep cleaning routine every 3 or 6 months. Otherwise, people will start noticing. They will find it. They'll find it clean when they arrive, but once they settle in, they look around and they will start noticing that the property needs some love and affection. This is hospitality. You have to get things right. So make sure you start with your regular cleaning checklist and the deep cleaning checklist to begin with. Next is set up payment processes. The biggest advice I can give you in this regard is keep one separate bank account for all your Airbnb transactions. This is what I do. I have one single bank account. All the money coming in from Airbnb goes into that bank account, and all the payments I do go from that account. That one account becomes my running books. Anytime I want to see how my business is doing, I can just open that account and I can see what I've made in last 1 month or 1 year. And at the end of the year, all I have to do is print my bank statements and send it to my accountant, and they know exactly what I've earned in this year from this business, right? Keep things simple right from the onset would be my advice, right? You do not want to spend hours and hours towards the end of the year trying to figure out how much you've earned, what were your expenses to this business. Everything in one account, and it keeps things very, very simple and straightforward for you. Operations and maintenance, I won't be able to talk about in this session, but I will share a link with you where you can read about them if you wish. Next is how Airbnb works. The first one is tax benefits. So this slide is for UK based hosts only. So if you are not in UK, please ignore this slide. If you're in UK, you get 2 kinds of tax advantages depending on the kind of property you have. If you're planning to rent a shared space on Airbnb, there is a scheme called Rent a Room scheme, which basically means that you get 7,500 tax-free. Because of housing shortage and everything, government is trying to encourage people to do this, and in return, you get this tax advantage. You don't have to pay any tax on the first 7,500 you earn by renting a room in your property. The second scheme is called Furnished Holiday Lettings, FHL in short. Just go into Google and type FHL HMRC and you will find all about it. All those properties which are entire properties will qualify for this. There are 4 main criteria for a property to qualify for a furnished holiday let in HMRC terms. The first one is it has to be an entire property. It cannot be a shared property, right? It has to be an entire house or a flat or a cottage. The second condition is it should be furnished. It cannot be an empty property. It needs to have all the basic furniture, things like a sofa, kitchen, equipped kitchen, beds, and all that stuff. The third criteria is it should be available for at least 210 nights in that year for public to book. And the fourth one is out of those 210, at least 105, which is 50%, should have been booked by one or multiple people from the public. That basically qualifies your property for a furnished holiday let in HMRC terms. There are lots of tax advantages. I'm not an accountant or an advisor. Speak to them. They will tell you all about it. Or you can just go into Google and find it all about there. They have a very simple article on it. But me as a landlord, my 2 favorite ones are, the first one is, if you have a normal tenant, you can no longer offset any expense done to your property against your income. right? If you decide to have a new kitchen in your property, you cannot offset that against your income in case of a normal tenant. Whereas if your property qualifies for an FHL, you can offset that against your income. Second favorite one I have is entrepreneur's relief. If you decide to sell your FHL property a few years down the line, you do not have to pay the regular capital gain tax. You pay a fixed 10% entrepreneur's relief. So you save quite a lot if it comes to selling your property a few years down the line. But speak to your accountant or advisor, or just type FHL HMRC on Google, and the very first link, they've clearly explained all those conditions and advantages of this scheme. Next is Airbnb pricing model, how pricing works on Airbnb. They're going to take a commission from both the parties. A guest pays a certain fee to Airbnb and the host pays a certain fee. They charge 12 to 18% from the guest. Okay, it's called guest service fee. This 12 to 18 varies depending on the amount of the booking and the duration of the booking. But for the purpose of this, let's just say it is 15%. Airbnb will take 15% from the guest and they will take 3% from the host. To give you a simple example, if you're renting your property for £100 a night, the person who is coming to stay there will be paying 115. And when it comes to paying you, Airbnb will pay you 97. That £18 in between is what Airbnb makes from that transaction. Now, this 3% is all you will ever have to pay to Airbnb. There is no extra charge for the insurance. It is just there by default, right? You cannot opt in or opt out. There's no extra charge for any card processing fee. There is literally nothing. This 3% is all they will ever take from you. Now, the next question you will have is, when do I get paid? Right? Airbnb releases the money 24 hours after the guest check-in. For example, if your check-in time is 3 p.m. and I'm booked into your property and I arrive at 6 p.m., my arrival time is irrelevant. Airbnb releases the money at 3 p.m. the following day. This also means that the first 24 hours is for the guest protection. They can report anything terribly wrong with the property. Sometimes, property isn't clean or it doesn't match the photos and all those complicated problems. But 24 hours after the guest check-in, Airbnb releases the money to you. The first time they will pay you, it takes them longer. Because they are meant to do all these identity checks and all those stuff, it will take them about 5 to 7 business days to get the money over to you the first time they pay. But after that, the money will reach your bank account within 12 hours of they releasing the money. So they release the money 24 hours after the check-in, and after that, within 12 hours, the money reaches your account. So it kind of becomes a cycle. Next is how reviews work on Airbnb. A few hours after the guest checkout, Airbnb sends an email invite to write a review for the other person, right? Your guest will get an invite and you will get an invite as well. From that point onwards, you will have 14 days to write a review. If one person writes a review and the other doesn't, that one review becomes public after 14 days. If both the parties write a review at any point in those 14 days, both the reviews become public straight away. And if no one writes a review in those 14 days, nothing happens. Now, a few key things to note in this regard is, this 14 days is all you will have to write a review. If you missed this 14-day period, there is no way Airbnb will let you write a review. So make sure you write a review within those 14 days. They won't listen. You had an operation, you were traveling, you had an accident. They won't listen. 14 days is all you have to write a review. If you miss it, that opportunity is gone. You cannot write a review. Okay, so make sure you write your review within those 14 days. Now, the second thing is Airbnb does not remove reviews either. Reviews on Airbnb stick. You can write a public response to a review and you can share your side of the story and your concerns and how it unfolded and all that. But Airbnb will not remove a review just because you don't like it. And I believe this is a good thing because, if I'm traveling on Airbnb, it gives me the comfort that there is no possible way the person could have managed to get rid of all the bad reviews and just leave the good ones. Having said that, there are 3 very exceptional scenarios I have seen Airbnb does remove reviews. The first one is no one can use abusive words or even hint of something discriminatory, right? They will remove it straight away. The second is no one can ask you for a refund or any kind of monetary gain in exchange for a good or a bad review, right? They will take care of it. And I've managed to remove 1 review in last 6 years like that. The guest was silly enough to tell me that if I don't give him a refund, he's going to leave a bad review. Otherwise, he will write a good one. I let the person leave a review. And once that was done, I sent it to Airbnb. They reviewed my conversation with the guest and they removed that review. And the third scenario is no one can mention something in a review which is beyond your control. Things like no one can say, the property was okay, but Edinburgh weather sucks and we just couldn't go anywhere. And they leave you a bad review. Airbnb will take care of that. Another thing to note is it's a 5-star rating system on Airbnb. People will get to review you on 5 stars, 1 to 5. And this 5-star rating system is not linear, which means 5-star is good and 4-star means bad on Airbnb. You will have to try and get a 5-star review every single time. Every time you receive a 4-star review or a sub 4-star review, you will notice a drop in your bookings because that is the Airbnb way of telling you that you need to get a 5-star. You need to get a 5-star. And it's not very difficult to get lots of 5-star reviews on Airbnb either. When they are reviewing your property, Airbnb makes it abundantly clear that do not compare this 5-star rating with a 5-star hotel because it is not. A 5-star rating on Airbnb simply means that the property was exactly as described. All you have to do to get lots of 5-star reviews on Airbnb is make sure your property advertisement correctly reflects your property. People should not have any surprises when they arrive. Whatever it is, whatever they will find, if there are any imperfections, just make it crystal clear on your listing so they know what to expect. So it's not very difficult to get lots of 5-star reviews. I managed to gather over 1,600 reviews like that because I know the trick is just to correctly reflect your property on your listing. Next is cancellation policies. You will have 3 cancellation policies to choose from. The first one is flexible, which means 24 hours before arrival, the guest can cancel and they get full refund. Second is moderate, which means 5 days, and strict is 14 days. Now, although it sounds like they get full refund when they cancel at these points, but it's not entirely true. Airbnb does not refund the guest service fee, which is 12 to 18% when the guest cancels. So keep this in mind that every time someone cancels their booking, they do not get away with a complete refund. They still lose a bit of their money when they cancel. The other advice I can give you in this is keep your cancellation policy to flexible as much as you can. There is a reason why all the hotels nowadays offer a flexible cancellation policy, because they know people need flexibility. People traveling with kids, traveling with a group of friends, they never know when they will have to cancel. If you are not the one who's offering the flexibility, they will go to someone who is. So try and be as flexible as you can. And it is true that sometimes people will cancel their booking so close to their arrival and you can't sell it to anyone else. And it happens to me all the time. My cancellation policy is always the flexible one, which is 24 hours before arrival. And sometimes during a year, people do cancel a day before their arrival, and I don't sell that night to anyone else. I can't because it's just too close. But you won't realize how many bookings you will get because you're so flexible throughout the year. So try and keep it flexible as much as you can would be my recommendation. The fourth cancellation policy is the long-term cancellation policy, which means any booking which is a long-term booking, it gets automatically applied. The definition of a long-term booking is 28 nights or more. Any reservation which is 28 nights or more is classed as a long-term booking, and Airbnb automatically applies their long-term cancellation policy on such bookings. What this means is you're guaranteed 1 month's rent on a long-term booking. For example, if I book your property for 3 months and if I decide to cancel it later, they will pay you 1 month's rent and they will refund me my 2 months. Simple as that. It's a long-term cancellation policy, but you cannot choose it. Next is how cleaning fee works on Airbnb. If you have not traveled on Airbnb yet, on this platform, guest pays the cleaning fee. They pay for the cleaning to be done after the leave. Do not hesitate in charging the cleaning fee to the guest. Everyone I know charges a cleaning fee. People who travel on Airbnb, they are used to paying the cleaning fee. So, do not hesitate. It is meant to include any labor charge, any cleaning cost and things like that. For example, my 2-bedroom apartment in Edinburgh, I charge a £50 cleaning fee. Out of that £50, £30 goes to my cleaner for their 2 hours of effort, and £20 goes to my laundrette. But make sure you charge a cleaning fee to the guest. Now, a couple of things in regards to cleaning fee. The first one is try and keep it to the actuals. Do not try and inflate your cleaning cost. The reason for that is the higher your cleaning fee is, the higher going to be the guest expectations. You do not want them to come with very high expectations, because you know what, if I'm charging £100 for a 2-bedroom apartment in Edinburgh instead of 50, I bet you they will come and find something in there. So try and keep it reasonable. Although people are used to paying it, but they still see your cleaning fee as a separate entry when they are paying it. Make sure they don't feel the pinch there. The next is, you will be thinking, how am I going to find the cleaner? Finding the cleaner is the easiest bit. Just go onto this Facebook group for your local Airbnb hosts, or just look for a Facebook group where people are looking for jobs in your area. People need jobs more than ever before. Finding a cleaner has never been a problem for me. Just post an advert in all these places. Within half an hour, you will get 2 or 3 responses. It might take you a couple of iterations. It might take you to try a few of them until you find the right one that works for you. But my mantra for finding a cleaner is I always try and find them in a pair, so they can cover for each other, right? It could be a husband and wife, or friends, or siblings, something like that. But it needs to be in a pair for me, because if they fall sick, if they're on holiday, who's going to cover for them? I'm not going to go and clean my property. So that is my mantra. Try and find them in a pair. If you have no idea what to charge for your cleaning fee, it's super simple. Just go into Airbnb and look for properties similar to yours in your area and see how much they are charging. You look at 5 or 10 of them and you will get a fair idea of what is the cleaning fee for a property like yours in your area. The next is, when you're negotiating with your cleaner, do not let them mislead you into believing that it needs a lot of cleaning. It doesn't. 90% of the people who stay in my properties, when leaving, they try and leave the property in exactly the same shape and form they found it, because they want a good review in return. And also they respect the fact that this is someone's space. This is not a hotel, right? But there are times when people leave it extra dirty, and that compensates for the other. My cleaner, I know that she doesn't spend more than 1 hour most of the times, but there are times when people leave it extra dirty as well. But it doesn't need a 3-hour cleaning every time someone leaves on a 2-bedroom apartment. So keep that in mind. The next is, you're not meant to provide cleaning during the stay either. The cleaning fee people pay on Airbnb is for 1 clean after they leave. You're not meant to provide any cleaning during the stay. It's a self-serviced property. There is everything they need to clean. There is a vacuum, there are cleaning supplies. Help yourself as you do. If they want you to arrange something, they will have to pay for it. but you're not meant to provide any cleaning or linen during the stay. If someone is staying for a week or longer, maybe you can give them some extra linen so they don't have to worry about washing them and not having anything to use, but you're not meant to provide any cleaning during the stay. Next is, can you choose who gets to stay in your property? And the answer is yes. It is a setting on Airbnb. It's called Instant Book. You can turn it on or off anytime you want, as many times as you want. When instant booking is off, that means no one can book your property without your approval. They can send a booking request, and at that point you can ask them any questions you may have, and only after you accept, their booking will be confirmed, or you can simply decline. On the other hand, when instant booking is on, it doesn't mean it's free for all. Airbnb lets you choose 2 more settings on top of that. The first one is they should have their government ID verified by Airbnb. And the second is they should have stayed on Airbnb in the past and the previous host has left positive remarks about that person. If both these conditions are met, they can book without waiting for your approval. Everyone else has to send you a booking request. So you have that kind of a control on who gets to book your property. Next is most common guest demands. These are the 4 most commonly asked questions. The first one is discount. About 50% of the people who stay in my properties, they ask for a discount. There is nothing wrong in asking for a discount, but all I'm saying is just keep your answers ready when you will offer a discount and when you won't. I personally never offer a discount because my prices are always very competitive. But just keep your answers together when you're going to offer and when you won't. Next is early check-in and late checkout. About 70% of the people coming to my properties, they ask for early check-in or late checkout. And I can completely understand why they're asking, because they arrive in the city a bit earlier, and if they can check in, why not? But for you as a host, it doesn't work. Try and not make it a habit. The key reason for that is the Airbnb insurance I was talking about, that covers you from the check-in time to the checkout time. If you're letting people in early, or if you're letting them stay longer, for those extra times, your property is not covered by Airbnb insurance. Anything goes wrong, you are on your own. So try and not make it a habit. I still allow exceptions because there is still a human in me. If someone is traveling with infants, or if someone has a mobility issues, I do help them sometimes, but I don't make it a habit. If you really want to help them, you can let them drop their luggage and they can come back to check in later, or at the time of checkout, they can leave the luggage behind and come back to pick it up later. But even these options have their own complications. If you think of it, your cleaner will be in the middle of the clean and they arrive and all those things. Try and avoid this altogether if you can. Just simply say, I'm sorry, it won't work for me, and that's it. If you really want to help them, let them drop the luggage. Next is, can you provide breakfast? People who are new to Airbnb will ask you this, right? Can you provide breakfast? Just because it is in the name, you do not have to offer a breakfast. Feel free to say there is no breakfast. It is mainly for people who are offering a shared space and they live in the same property and they're going to make some breakfast for them, so they'll make something for them as well. But I've never seen someone offering a breakfast on an entire property. So feel free to say there is no breakfast. Cereal doesn't count as a breakfast. So even if you're planning to provide cereal, don't even mention it. Let it be a surprise for the guest. Next is what not to do on Airbnb. And let me explain how the bookings work. Until a booking is confirmed, people can send you inquiries, they can send you messages, but you don't see a lot of detail about the person at that point. You only see their first name, where they are from in the world, and if they have any reviews from the previous stays. But as soon as the booking is confirmed, you get to see their last name, their profile picture, and their phone number. The reason I'm telling you this is people will message you before making a booking, and they will try and pass their phone number or email address, and they'll say, I need to discuss something with you about this property. Can you contact me this number? All they are trying to do is contact you outside so they can book it directly with you without having Airbnb involved, because they do not like to pay that 12 to 18% by exposing you to the risk. If anything happens when you are booked directly with the guest, there is no Airbnb behind you. So try and avoid communicating with all such people, right? My standard answer to all those people is, whatever it is, please ask me here, but I'm not allowed to speak to unconfirmed reservations outside the platform. On the other hand, once the booking is confirmed, you will have access to their phone number. But at that point, it doesn't mean that now you're good to go. Just pick up the phone and sort them out. The reason for that is, if anything goes wrong and if it comes to investigating something, Airbnb will not even look at your text message exchange or email exchange with a guest. The only evidence they will ever consider is what you said and what they said on Airbnb platform. So it is in your best interest to keep all your communication with the guest on Airbnb. And there are times when you will have to just pick up the phone and sort them out. Things like, they can't find the property, they can't open the lock, or the situation is just too complicated to type. You can just pick up the phone and discuss with them. But any key decision you make with the guest over the phone, make sure you come back and summarize it on Airbnb just for the record. But keep all your communication on Airbnb as much as you can. Next is accept cash or payments outside Airbnb. It is easily done. Someone is staying there for 2 nights. They will message you saying, I want to stay for another night. Can I pay you extra? Do not accept that cash, because for the 3rd night, when you're booking with them directly, anything goes wrong, there is not going to be Airbnb behind you. You will be on your own. And the last one is never ever use a bad word. They are super strict about it. I've seen experienced hosts disappear from the platform within 10 minutes of them using a bad word. So try and never lose it on Airbnb. They will not hesitate in canceling tens or hundreds of your future bookings if it comes to that. Next is must have amenities to provide. I'm sure everyone is planning to provide a towel, a pillow, linen, Wi-Fi, smoke alarm, and carbon monoxide alarm, because these are pretty standard to provide nowadays. Fire extinguisher and first aid kit is not usually part of safety laws in most of the countries, especially in UK. But I recommend you spend those £20. You can get both of these items for £20 from Amazon. Get these 2 items and place them in your property. You never know when they might save someone's life one day, or they may protect you from something. That £20 is worth spending. So try and do that. The next list is the standout list. This is the list of amenities you can provide, which will help you stand out in your local market, which effectively means get you more bookings than your neighbor. The first one is self-check-in. Try and offer a self check-in to people so they can just check in whenever they want and they can pick up the keys and get into the property. No one really wants to coordinate their arrival time with anyone, and that is the reason people prefer a self check-in. And it has always been the case. Any property which is self check-in gets more bookings than the property which isn't. So try and offer those options. I will talk about a few of these options later in the slides. Laptop friendly workspace is another one. A desk and a chair is all you have to provide, but people look for it. Not just business travelers, people traveling for leisure, they carry their laptops with them nowadays and they try and check their emails and spend some time on a computer at the end of the day. So try and offer a desk and a chair. It's a very simple thing. Free parking, if you can, no matter where you are, it is very difficult to find. If you can offer parking, people will prefer your property a lot more than the others. Pet-friendly spaces is my favorite. This alone will get you more bookings than anything else in this list. There is a huge gap in the demand and supply for pet-friendly spaces. So try and offer your property as a pet-friendly space. People traveling with pets are more responsible than we think. They pay more and they stay more. So try and offer your property as a pet-friendly property. You do not have to provide anything. They will carry everything with them. You just have to let them bring their pet along. You can set a pet cleaning fee as well. Airbnb will automatically collect that for you for anyone bringing pets with them. For example, for my property, I charge £30 extra for anyone bringing a pet. So that covers the extra effort my cleaner will have to spend when cleaning after the pets. But try and offer your property as a pet-friendly if you can. Next is instant book. Try and make your property instantly bookable, because as you can imagine, no one really wants to wait for 24 hours to have a chat with someone to know that their reservation is confirmed or not. They just want an instant answer so they can carry on making the rest of the plans. So try and offer your property instantly bookable if you can. Next is recommend but don't provide third-party services. And I'm telling you this from my experience. When I started back in 2016, I thought that I'm going to send a taxi to the airport to pick my guest up. And the taxi will bring the guest straight to my apartment, pass them the keys, and the guest will just love the experience. And it sounds perfect on papers, but when it comes to doing it, you do not really want a bad review if the taxi was late or the taxi didn't even show up. You want to be rated only for the quality of accommodation you provide, nothing else. Next is identify key handover processes. When it comes to passing the keys to the guest, these are literally the 5 options you have to choose from. The first one is a lockbox. It's a £15 device you can buy from Amazon. Master lock is the most common name for this kind of a lock. It has a combination lock on it. You just give the combination to the guest. They arrive, they open the lockbox, pick up the keys, and when leaving, they open it again and drop the keys back in. Simple as that. It is cheap and it works. So try and go for it if you do not want something complicated. You can stick them on the wall, you can hang them on the railings. 95% of Airbnbs, at least in UK, work on that £15 device. So go for it if you don't want something complicated. Next is smart lock. Smart locks are smarter than we think. They connect to internet and then they connect to Airbnb. And every time a guest books your property, your lock will send a unique code to the guest, and that code will be valid only for the duration of their booking, and it will become invalid as soon as the checkout time arrives. If you're looking for something sophisticated like this will be the right option. But smart locks are a little bit more expensive than a lockbox. Nowadays it costs about £150 to £200 in UK, but they are very well designed. They are designed in a way so it's very easy for you to just take your old lock out and put the new one in and you're ready to go. All you will have to worry about is changing the batteries every 3 to 6 months. Next is meet and greet. As I said earlier, it is not really the ideal option because no one really wants to coordinate their arrival time with anyone. But if it is the only option for you, if you live on the property or too close to the property, absolutely no problem in passing the keys, but try and not engage them in a conversation when they arrive. Pass them the keys, make sure they have your contact number so they can reach you, and let them carry on with their business. The fourth one is a building staff. If you have a shop nearby, or if you have a concierge in the building or a reception area, they can pass them the keys. It is as good as a lockbox, not a problem. If none of these options work for you, a key handover service like Key Cafe or Key Nest might work for you. What they do is they speak to all these off-license shops and convenience stores in your area which are open for extended hours, and these shops will basically do the key handover for you. Just go into these 2 websites, Key Cafe and Key Nest. These are the 2 most prominent ones and just find out all about what they do and how they do it. They charge £5 for a one-off key handover in UK, and if you want to sign up a monthly deal with them, they do about £22 for an unlimited key handovers in a month. But hop onto these websites and find out more about them. Next is provide the right information to minimize communication. People traveling on Airbnb will inherently try and engage you in a conversation. When I started, I would literally spend hours with each guest, helping them make their travel plans and what they should eat when they are here and things like that. But soon I realized this was not the best use of my time. I had to come up with something to minimize any kind of unnecessary communication with the guest by providing them the right information at the right time. These are the 5 things I came up with which minimizes all the unnecessary communication with your guest. The first one is check-in and check-out time. People will try and ignore your check-in and check-out time if you don't remind them a day before. They will arrive at your door 2 hours before the check-in time and say, oh, sorry, I didn't realize your check-in time is 3 o'clock, but I'm here. Can I just go in? It leads to unnecessary communication and hassle. So the key to minimize this is remind them a day before their check-in, telling them, guys, your check-in time is 3 o'clock tomorrow. See you then. The same you do for checkout time. Guys, your checkout time is 11 o'clock tomorrow. Our cleaners will be arriving shortly after that. That's it. It minimizes all that unnecessary communication with the guest. Remind them of house rules. On Airbnb, you can set your own house rules, and Airbnb makes sure when people are booking your property, they read and accept your house rules. But by the time they arrive at your property, it's likely that they just forgot all about that, right? So if you have house rules for your property, remind them a day before arrival so it is fresh again in their memory. Next is detailed travel directions and check-in instructions. The biggest revelation for me when I started hosting was the most important step of the entire hosting process is the check-in step. If the guest was able to pick up the keys and get into the properties without waiting anywhere, you won them. 50% of the battle is won once the guest is checked in smoothly. If they had to wait for 5, 10, 15 minutes anywhere during the process, they will not forgive you. It will reflect in the reviews. So your whole effort should be to make sure the check-in process is as smooth as you can. And the key to doing that is give them step-by-step instructions on how to get to your property and pick up the keys and open the lock. For example, I give them detailed step-by-step instructions on how to get to my property from nearest airport, train station, bus stop, and if they're driving, I give them a Google link and I give them step-by-step instructions. In a way, once the person has arrived in your area, it is your responsibility to give them clear instructions on how to access your property. And if the taxi driver took them a detour of 15 minutes to your property, you will be held partly responsible for that, right? So your effort should be to give them clear instructions. For example, my guest arriving on airport, this is what I send them. When you're at the airport, do not take an Uber cab, take a black cab because black cab drivers know Edinburgh. And tell the taxi driver that you want to go to Old Fisher Market Close on Cowgate via Grassmarket, and they will know exactly where to take you. And when the taxi starts slowing down, you will see Wings Restaurant to your right, and clockwise to the right of the Wings Restaurant is the second door, which is the flat you're going to. And I send them a picture highlighting the restaurant, highlighting my apartment door, highlighting the lockbox, and I write the code they need to enter to open the lockbox. This makes it super clear, foolproof for anyone to miss. I don't remember the last time someone had to call me to figure out where my apartment is. Try and give them super clear instructions like that. And the last one is provide instructions for appliances. It is a good idea to keep all the user manuals in a big folder somewhere in your property so people can access it. But people need quick answers. They do not want to read a 15 pages book to find how to turn something on. They will start messaging you or phoning you. My way of killing all that unnecessary communication is by sticking simple white stickers on all the appliances. For example, on a bedside table like this, I have a white sticker next to the button which says press this button to turn it on and press it again to turn it off, and that takes care of all the unnecessary messages. I have that sticker on everything, for example, a stove, cooker hood, extractor fan, remote controls, all these things are super critical. People do need your help again and again for these things. People really appreciate the kind of extent you have gone to, and this at the same time increases their level of satisfaction from your property. Next is practical hosting tips, which is nothing but a selection of my favorite tips, which I like to share with everyone. First one is, if you're worried about parties in your property, if you think someone is going to misuse your property, somewhere in your communication, mention it to them that you live next door. They will disappear. They will not proceed with the booking, or if they have booked, they will cancel it. This is the trick I use. Maybe it will work for you as well. Try not to fall in the rookie trap of providing extras like wine, transport, etc. This is what people do when they start hosting. They try and offer a wine or a chocolate or a cookie basket. Trust me, I've been there, done that. It's not worth it. Okay. You want to be rated for the quality of accommodation you're providing, nothing else. People will still be ruthless with you if you gave them a bottle of wine, but the property wasn't clean. Okay, so stick to the basics. Give them what you advertise and what you've promised, which is a clean quality accommodation. Everything else is just going to be distraction. You don't know what contains dairy, gluten, nuts. There are regulations around giving alcohol to. You don't know who you're giving alcohol to. All this is not completely worth it. Trust me, avoid all that and stick to giving quality, clean accommodation to the guest. It's okay to give them tea, coffee, sugar, and milk because people really appreciate when they're able to make a drink during the stay. Avoid complicated coffee machines like the ones with the pods and the filters, because your cleaner will keep missing it. Your guest will definitely not look after it, and it becomes another source of grief. It's okay to give French press purely because it is so easy to clean, but try and avoid having those complicated machines. Keep a secret key somewhere close to the property. This is a lifesaver. All you need is a 15-pound lockbox somewhere in the vicinity of the property, just in case you need a second key. When that happens, you can just lead the person to the secret lockbox and they can access it. It has saved me numerous unnecessary trips to my property. I could just lead them to the secret lockbox. So try and have that. Keep extra supplies in a storage with a combination lock on it. You will end up having extra supplies. It's okay to keep them in the property, but make sure you keep them locked. Not everyone, but some people will misuse it if you let them access it. I've had a couple who stayed for 2 nights in Edinburgh and they used 14 towels just because it was there accessible to them. So try and avoid having those scenarios by putting a lock on it. But when you put a lock, make sure it is not a key lock. It should be a combination lock, because there will be times when you really need to let the guest access it. They might need extra cleaning supplies. They might need an extra pillow or a cushion cover or a sheet. When that happens, you just give them the combination, they open it and they lock it back again. There should be no key. Otherwise, the key will keep going missing. Your cleaner forgot to put it there, or your guest took it away with them, things like that. So put a combination lock on it if you can. Your biggest enemy can be the most amazing photos of your property. This is what people do when they start. They hire the best photographer in town. They come with elaborate, sophisticated cameras. Photos look amazing, but when the guest arrives, it's all missing. This is hospitality. It's all about under promise and over deliver. You do not want the photos to look better than the property is. You do not really need a photographer. You can just use your smartphone to take photos. Just hold it horizontally at your belly button and stand in all 4 corners of every space in your property and take photographs. Open all the drawers in the kitchen and give them a view of what kind of cutlery they will have access to, what kind of pots and pans they have access to, and what kind of appliances you have in the kitchen. Give them a view from the windows. Give them a view from the exterior of the building, how the building looks from outside, and how the street and the entrance looks from outside. All these things are more important than having professional looking amazing shots. The amenities you provide decide the kind of guest you will get. If you have all single beds, you will get all singles and stags coming to your property. If you have all double beds, you will get couples coming. If you have a double bed and 2 single beds, you will get a couple with 2 young kids coming. You can literally design your property to attract a certain kind of client to your property. If you're offering a high chair and a travel cot, you're attracting people traveling with infants, right? So think of all those scenarios, and if it is an option for you, try and attract your ideal client by offering the right amenities for them. Keep it insect and rodent free. Airbnb is super strict about these things. If you have any kind of infestation or a mice problem, get a professional treatment done before you start Airbnb. It happened to me once when I started hosting. The guest found a mice in the property. They sent a photo to Airbnb. They moved the guest straight away into another accommodation, and they blocked my property for future bookings until I get a professional treatment done. I had to give them an evidence. Only after that, they opened it again for bookings. So make sure you have all these things in control before you start. This is the end of my presentation. We will have the question and answer session now. But before we begin, I will need your email address to send you all the information which I've been promising you so far. Please do not give me your email address via the messages or anything. I need you to click on the link which I'm going to send you in the Zoom chat now. You clicking on this link is important from my point of view as well, because this is the only way Airbnb will know that I've supported you and they will compensate me for my time. Please click on this link. It will take you to another Airbnb page, which will have a button says message Prayas. Click on that button and type in your email address and send it to me. Once I have your email address, I will take care of everything else which I've been promising you so far. And having said that, let's have the question and answer session.